My name is Emilio, and I am 62 years old. I spent 4 decades working as an electrician, climbing ladders in the dark wiring houses while my hands bled in the winter cold. I did it all for my family, for my wife Maria, who passed 3 years ago, for my 2 sons who I believed would always stand by me. But on Thanksgiving night, my daughter-in-law looked me in the eyes and called me a hateful man. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I simply let the room decide who I really was. Before I tell you what happened, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments. And if stories about family sacrifice and finding your dignity again speak to you, hit that like button and subscribe. Stay with me because what happened next taught me more about family than 50 years of marriage ever did. I was born in the Bronx, New York, in the winter of 1964. My parents had come from Puerto Rico with nothing but 2 suitcases and a dream that their children would have a better life than they did. My father worked 2 jobs for as long as I can remember. During the day, he stood at a sewing machine in a garment factory in Manhattan, stitching together clothes that he could never afford to buy. At night, after a quick dinner of rice and beans, he would take the subway to an office building in Midtown, where he mopped floors and emptied trash cans until midnight. I rarely saw him awake. Most of my memories of my father are of him sleeping on the couch, still wearing his work boots, because he was too exhausted to take them off. My mother worked as a housekeeper for wealthy families on the Upper East Side. She would leave before sunrise and return after dark, smelling of cleaning products and other people's perfume. She cleaned their bathrooms, washed their dishes, folded their laundry, and then she would come home to our tiny apartment and do the same for us, because that is what mothers did. She never complained. Not once. She would just smile at me and say, "Mijo, one day you will have a house of your own and someone will help you keep it clean." I started working when I was 12 years old. After school, I would meet my father at the office building and help him with the cleaning. I pushed the mop bucket down long hallways while he vacuumed the carpets. We worked in silence most nights, but sometimes he would stop and look at me with tired eyes and say, "Study hard, Emilio. Your hands should not look like mine when you are my age." But my hands did end up looking like his. Rough, scarred, calloused from years of hard work. I did not go to college. We could not afford it, and besides, I needed to work. At 18, I got an apprenticeship with an electrician in Queens. A man named Frank DeLuca took me under his wing and taught me everything he knew: how to wire a house, how to read blueprints, how to stay calm when a job went wrong. Frank was a tough man, but fair. He once told me, "Emilio, this trade will give you a good life if you respect it. Work hard, be honest, and you will never go hungry." I took those words to heart. The day I received my electrician's license was one of the proudest days of my life. I came home to our apartment in the Bronx and showed my parents the certificate. My mother cried and kissed my cheeks. My father, who rarely showed emotion, put his hand on my shoulder and squeezed. His eyes were wet, but he did not let the tears fall. He said, "You have gone further than I ever could, son. You have made us proud." He passed away 3 years later from a heart attack. He was only 54. I have never forgotten his words. I met Maria at a birthday party in the summer of 1988. I was 24 years old, and I had just started my own small electrical contracting business. The party was for a friend's cousin, held in the backyard of a small house in the Bronx. There was loud salsa music, and the smell of roasting pork, and the laughter of people who had known each other their whole lives. And then I saw her. Maria was standing by the food table holding a paper plate and laughing at something someone had said. She had dark hair that fell past her shoulders and a smile that lit up the entire backyard. I swear to you, time stopped when I saw her. I must have stared for too long because my friend elbowed me in the ribs and said, "Go talk to her," before someone else at me with those beautiful brown eyes, and at me with those beautiful brown eyes, and said, "Yes, it is. Are you going to stand there all night? Or are you going to ask me to dance?" I almost choked on my own tongue. But I managed to say yes, and we danced. Maria was a nurse. She had just graduated from nursing school and was working at a hospital in Manhattan. She was smart, kind, and had a laugh that could make you forget every problem you had ever had. I knew within a week that I was going to marry her. It took me 3 months of persistent courting to convince her. Every week I would pick a wildflower from the park near her apartment and leave it on her doorstep with a note. Nothing fancy. Just things like "thinking of you" or "your smile made my day." She later told me that it was the wildflowers that won her over. Not because they were expensive or beautiful, but because they showed that I paid attention to the small things. We got married in the spring of 1989 in a small church in the Bronx. It was a simple ceremony, just family and close friends. Maria wore a white dress that her mother had altered from a thrift store find, and she looked more beautiful than any bride in any magazine. I wore a rented suit that was slightly too big in the shoulders, but I did not care. All I cared about was the woman standing in front of me, promising to spend the rest of her life by my side. After the ceremony, we had a reception in her parents' backyard. There was homemade food and cheap wine and a radio playing our favorite songs. It was not fancy, but it was perfect. That night, as we lay together in our tiny studio apartment, Maria said something I have never forgotten. She said, "We do not need much, Emilio. We just need each other." I promised her then that I would build us a life, a real life, with a house and children and everything we had dreamed of, and I kept that promise. Our first son, Marcus, was born in 1991. I was 27 years old, and I had never held anything so small and precious in my life. He had Maria's eyes and my stubbornness. I remember looking at him in the hospital and thinking, "I will do anything for you." Anything. And I meant it. 3 years later, our second son, Julian, came into the world. He was different from Marcus from the start. Where Marcus was bold and loud, Julian was quiet and observant. He was also a sickly child. He caught every cold, every flu, every bug that passed through our neighborhood. There were nights when Maria and I took turns holding him, rocking him, praying that his fever would break. There were hospital visits and doctor bills and sleepless weeks that blurred together into a haze of worry and exhaustion. I worked harder than ever during those years. I took every job I could find. I wired houses, offices, restaurants, schools. I worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7. I left before the boys woke up and came home after they were asleep. I missed birthdays and school plays and Little League games. I told myself it was worth it. I told myself I was doing it for them. Maria and I made a system. She worked the night shift at the hospital, and I worked the day shift at my jobs. We passed each other like ships in the night, leaving notes on the kitchen counter. "Your dinner is in the fridge. The boys need new shoes. I love you." It was not easy, but we made it work. We were a team. There were sacrifices. So many sacrifices. I remember the year Marcus turned 8. He wanted to learn piano. He had heard a concert on television and begged us to let him take lessons. I looked at our budget and knew we could not afford it. But then I thought of the pickup truck I had been saving for. A 1978 Ford Cherry Red sitting in a lot 3 blocks from our house. I had been putting aside $20 a week for 2 years. I took that money and used it to pay for Marcus's piano lessons instead. He never knew. I never told him. When Julian was 5, he got pneumonia. It was bad. Really bad. The doctors said he needed to be hospitalized for at least a week. Our insurance covered most of it, but not all. I had one valuable thing left from my father, a silver pocket watch that his father had brought from Puerto Rico. It was old and scratched, but it still worked. I sold it to a pawn shop for $200 to cover the hospital bills. I told myself my father would have understood. Family comes first. Always. The winter Julian was 5 was the worst winter of my life. Not because of the cold, but because of the choices I had to make. We had just paid the hospital bill, and money was tighter than ever. The boys needed winter coats. Good ones, not the thin jackets from the discount store. I found 2 warm parkas on sale and bought them with the last of my savings. That left nothing for me. I spent that winter walking to jobs in a jacket that had holes in the sleeves and shoes with soles worn thin as paper. Every step was cold, but I did not complain. My boys were warm. That was all that mattered. As the years passed, I watched my sons grow into young men. Marcus was smart and ambitious. He got good grades and earned a partial scholarship to a business school in Boston. We were so proud of him. But a partial scholarship is not a full scholarship. Maria and I sat down with our budget and made more cuts. We stopped going out to eat. We canceled our cable television. We took on extra shifts at work. Whatever it took to pay for our son's education. Julian was not as academically gifted as his brother, but he had a different kind of talent. He could draw. He could look at something and capture it on paper in a way that took your breath away. He wanted to study graphic design, and we supported him even though we did not fully understand what graphic design was. We just knew that our son had a gift, and we wanted him to develop it. I remember the day Marcus graduated from college. I sat in the audience wearing my only suit, watching my son walk across that stage to receive his diploma. I cried. I am not ashamed to admit it. I thought about my father, who had not lived to see this moment. I thought about all those early mornings and late nights, all those missed dinners and sacrificed dreams, and I thought it was worth it. All of it was worth it. 2 years later, Julian graduated. I gave him a gift that I had been saving for a professional drawing pen set that cost more than my first week's paycheck as an apprentice. He hugged me so hard, I thought he would crack my ribs. He said, "Thank you, Dad, for everything." I told him, "This is just the beginning, mijo. Go make something beautiful. Those were good years, hard but good." Maria and I had built something real, a family, a home, a life filled with love and purpose. But nothing lasts forever. And 3 years ago, everything changed. It started with a cough. Maria had been tired for weeks, but she blamed it on work. She was still nursing, still taking care of everyone else before herself. When the cough did not go away, I made her see a doctor. They ran tests, and then more tests. And then they sat us down in a small office with fluorescent lights and told us that my wife had pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. They said she had maybe 6 months. I retired early. I did not even think about it. I just knew that I needed to be with her. Every minute, every second. I had spent so much of our marriage working, providing, sacrificing. Now I needed to be present. Really present. Those last 6 months were the hardest and most beautiful of my life. I learned to cook all of Maria's favorite dishes. I read to her every night even after she became too weak to keep her eyes open. I held her hand during the bad nights when the pain was too much. And I told her I loved her so many times that the words became like breathing. On her last night, Maria squeezed my hand and looked at me with those same beautiful brown eyes I had fallen in love with 30 years before. She said, "Take care of our boys." and take care of yourself. Promise me." I promised. She smiled, and then she was gone. She passed on a Tuesday morning in October in our bedroom in my arms. The trees outside our window were turning gold and red, and the sunlight was coming through the curtains. It was quiet, peaceful even. But I felt like someone had carved a hole in my chest and left me hollow. After the funeral, the boys went back to their lives. Marcus was in Boston with his wife and daughter. Julian was nearby, but he had his own life too. I understood. They had jobs, responsibilities, families of their own. But the house felt empty without Maria. Every room held a memory, every corner held a ghost. I learned to live with the silence, but I never got used to it. That is why Thanksgiving this year felt so important. It would be the first time in 3 years that everyone would be together under this roof. Marcus, his wife Diana, their daughter Sophia, Julian and his wife Priscilla. A full house like the old days. I told myself this would be a fresh start, a chance to rebuild what we had lost. I had no idea how wrong I was. To understand what happened at Thanksgiving, you need to know about my daughter-in-law, Diana. She married Marcus 4 years ago, and from the beginning, I sensed that something was different about her. Not bad exactly, just different. Diana came from a wealthy family in the suburbs of Boston. Her parents had a house with 6 bedrooms and a swimming pool. She went to private schools and summer camps and never had to worry about money a day in her life. There is nothing wrong with that. I do not begrudge anyone their blessings. But Diana had a way of looking at things that made me feel like I was being measured and found lacking. The first time she visited our house, she walked through the rooms with a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. She said all the right things. "What a lovely home. You must have so many memories here." But I saw her touch the peeling paint on the windowsill. I saw her glance at the worn carpet and the old appliances. Later, I overheard her telling Marcus, "It is a bit small, is it not? It could use some updating." Marcus did not disagree. He just changed the subject. I tried not to let it bother me. Diana was young. She had grown up differently. I told myself she would learn to appreciate our family's values over time. I was patient and kind. I welcomed her with open arms. I treated her like the daughter I never had. But over the years, I began to notice things. Marcus changed after he married Diana. He used to call me every week. Now it was once a month, if that. He used to visit on holidays. Now there was always an excuse. Diana's family had plans. Work was busy. Sophia had activities. I understood, or at least I tried to. But each missed phone call, each canceled visit felt like a small piece of my son slipping away. His birthday last year was especially hard. I called him in the morning, excited to wish him well. I got his voicemail. I left a message. I waited all day for him to call back. He never did. Finally, around 9 in the evening, I received a text message. "Thanks for the call, Dad. Crazy busy day. Talk soon." That was it. No phone call. No real conversation. Just 8 words on a screen. The anniversary of Maria's death was even worse. I had asked Marcus to come home just for the day. I wanted us to visit her grave together as a family. He said he would try to make it. He did not. He sent flowers instead. Nice flowers, expensive flowers, but flowers all the same. I stood at Maria's grave alone and wondered where I had lost my son. Julian was different. He and his wife Priscilla lived closer, just 2 hours away. They visited often. Priscilla was a school teacher, kind and genuine with a warmth that reminded me of Maria. Julian had turned out to be a good man, sensitive and caring. He helped me around the house. He called just to check in. He remembered the things that mattered. A week before Thanksgiving, Julian came to visit. We sat in the kitchen eating sandwiches when he set down his glass and looked at me with serious eyes. He said, "Dad, I need to tell you something about Diana." I felt my stomach tighten. "What about her?" Julian hesitated. Priscilla heard something. She ran into one of Diana's friends at a coffee shop. They were talking and Diana's name came up. I waited. Julian said, "Diana has been saying things about you to her friends. She calls you old-fashioned, difficult to deal with. She said you are stuck in the past and do not know how to let go." I sat there in silence for a long moment. The words stung more than I wanted to admit. I had tried so hard to make Diana feel welcome. I had bent over backward to accommodate her. And behind my back, she was painting me as some kind of stubborn old fool. But I did not want to create conflict. I said, "She is your brother's wife. We have to respect that." Julian shook his head. "Just be careful, Dad. She is not who she pretends to be." I appreciated the warning, but I pushed it aside. I told myself that Thanksgiving would be different. We would all be together. We would eat and laugh and remember what it meant to be a family. I held on to that hope like a lifeline. 2 weeks before the holiday, I called Marcus to confirm the plans. He answered on the fourth ring, sounding distracted. "Yeah, Dad, we will be there. Got to go. Talk later." He hung up before I could say anything else. Later that evening, Diana called me, but it was not to ask how I was doing or to chat about the holiday. It was to give me a list of demands, though she called them requests. First, she said I should not make pernil. That is the traditional Puerto Rican roast pork that Maria used to make every Thanksgiving. Diana explained that Sophia does not eat pork. She said it like it was an obvious fact that I should have known. Second, she said dinner needed to start at exactly 5 o'clock because they had a schedule to keep. What schedule, she did not say. Third, she suggested that I should tidy up the house a bit because she wanted to take family photos and the background needed to look nice. I listened to all of this without argument. I said yes to everything. After I hung up the phone, I sat in the living room for a long time looking at Maria's picture on the wall. I said to her, "She is not like you, mi amor. But I will try. I will try for Marcus. I will try for Sophia. I will try for this family." That night I did not sleep well. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was wrong to feel hurt by Diana's words. Wondering if maybe I was too old-fashioned, too stuck in the past. But then I thought about everything I had sacrificed for this family, and I knew I had nothing to apologize for. I had given everything I had, and I would keep giving as long as I had breath in my body. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and clear. I woke at 4 o'clock before the sun was up and went to the kitchen to begin cooking. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy on your chest. I turned on the small radio Maria used to listen to while she cooked. Old salsa music filled the room, and for a moment I could almost pretend she was still here with me. I started with the pernil. I know Diana had asked me not to make it, but this was for me, not for her. This was Maria's recipe passed down from her mother and her mother before that. I could not let a Thanksgiving pass without it. I rubbed the pork shoulder with garlic, oregano, and olive oil just like Maria taught me. I scored the skin in a diamond pattern and let the marinade seep into every cut. As I worked, I talked to Maria in my head. I told her the boys were coming. I told her I missed her. I told her I would make her proud. By noon, the turkey was in one oven and the pernil was in the other. The kitchen smelled like holidays past, like family and love and everything good in this world. I had spent the previous 3 days cleaning the house from top to bottom. I painted the front fence. I bought new tablecloths. I polished the silverware that Maria and I had received as a wedding gift. I wanted everything to be perfect. Before the guests arrived, I set the dining table with extra care. I put out the good plates, the ones we only used on special occasions. I folded the napkins just the way Maria liked. And in the seat where Maria used to sit, I placed a single white flower. A small tribute to the woman who had made every Thanksgiving magical. Julian and Priscilla arrived first around 3 o'clock. Julian walked through the door with a bottle of wine in one hand and a casserole dish in the other. He hugged me tight and said, "It smells amazing in here, Dad." Priscilla kissed my cheek and said, "The house looks beautiful. You have been busy." Their warmth filled the empty spaces in my heart, at least for a little while. Marcus, Diana, and Sophia arrived an hour later. I heard their car pull into the driveway and felt my heart lift. My granddaughter Sophia was 6 years old and the light of my life. She had Maria's smile and an energy that could fill any room. I went to the door to greet them. Sophia ran up the walkway and threw her arms around my legs. "Grandpa," she shouted, "I missed you." I knelt down and hugged her back, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I missed you too, Mija," I said. "So much." Behind her, Marcus walked up with a tight smile. "Hey, Dad," he said, giving me a brief hug. The kind of hug you give a coworker, not a father. Diana followed, carrying her designer purse like a shield. She did not hug me. She just nodded and said, "Hello, Emilio." I led them inside, trying to ignore the chill that Diana brought with her. But the moment she stepped through the door, her nose wrinkled. She said, "It smells like pork in here. I thought I asked you not to make that." I kept my voice calm. I made a small portion for myself. The main dish is turkey. Sophia will not have to eat any pork. Diana sighed loudly, shaking her head as if I had personally insulted her. She walked past me into the dining room, and that is when she saw the flower on Maria's chair. She stopped and stared at it. "Why is there a flower here?" she asked. "Can we move it?" "It is taking up space." I felt something tighten in my chest. "That is Maria's seat," I said quietly. I put the flower there to honor her. Diana looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. "But she is not here anymore," she said. "It seems a bit morbid." I did not respond. I simply turned and walked back to the kitchen. Behind me, I heard Julian say, "Leave it alone, Diana. It is Dad's house." Diana did not reply, but I could feel her disapproval hanging in the air like a storm cloud. We gathered around the table at exactly 5 o'clock, as Diana had requested. I stood at the head of the table and asked everyone to bow their heads for a prayer. I thanked God for the food, for our health, and for the blessing of having family together. I mentioned Maria. I said that she was watching over us from heaven and that her love was still present in this home. When I finished and looked up, I noticed Diana had not closed her eyes. She was looking at her phone under the table. The meal began. I tried to keep the conversation light. I asked Marcus about his work. He gave short answers. I asked Diana about her law practice. She gave even shorter answers. Julian and Priscilla did their best to fill the silence with stories about their lives, their students, their plans for the future. Sophia was the only one who seemed genuinely happy to be there. She chattered about her school and her friends, and the book she was reading about horses. At one point, I started telling a story about Maria. It was a funny story from our first Thanksgiving as a married couple. Maria had tried to cook a turkey for the first time, and she forgot to remove the bag of giblets from inside the bird. When we cut into it at dinner, the plastic bag burst and gravy went everywhere. We laughed so hard we cried. Maria was mortified at first, but soon she was laughing harder than anyone. Julian and Priscilla laughed at the story. Even Marcus cracked a small smile. But Diana set down her fork and said, "Can we talk about something else? It is kind of depressing to keep bringing up the dead." The table went silent. I looked at Diana, trying to understand how anyone could say something so callous. She met my eyes without flinching. I looked down at my plate and did not say another word for a long time. After the main course, Diana started a new conversation, one I was not prepared for. "So Emilio," she said, "Marcus and I have been talking. This house is getting old. You are living alone. Have you thought about selling it?" I blinked, sure I had misheard. Marcus spoke up then, but not to defend me. Marcus spoke up then, but not to defend me. "Dad, Diana has a point. This house needs a lot of repairs. It is too much for you to handle on your own." I looked at my son, the boy I had sacrificed everything for, and I felt like I was seeing a stranger. "This house," I said slowly, "is where your mother and I built our life. It is where you grew up. She died in this house in our bedroom in my arms. And you want me to sell it?" "It is just practical," Diana said with a wave of her hand. "You are being emotional." Julian could not stay silent any longer. "That is not your decision to make. This is Dad's house. He gets to decide what happens to it." Diana turned to him with narrowed eyes. "Stay out of this," she said. "This is between Marcus and his father." The tension was suffocating. Priscilla reached over and took Julian's hand, trying to calm him. I looked around the table at my fractured family and wondered how we had gotten here. How we had gone from laughter and love to this cold, bitter standoff. I did not argue anymore. I just said I will think about it. And I changed the subject to dessert. But I knew in that moment that something had broken. Something that might never be repaired. After the dessert dishes were cleared, Diana announced that she wanted to take family photos. She had brought a fancy camera and a tripod, and she began arranging everyone in the living room. She positioned Marcus and Sophia in the center, then placed Julian and Priscilla to one side. When she got to me, she pointed to the far right edge of the frame. "Stand over there," she said. "We want the kids in the middle." I did not argue. I moved to where she indicated, feeling like a guest in my own home. Diana took several photos, checking each one on the camera's display. After the fifth shot, she frowned. "The background is too cluttered," she said. "Let us move to the other side of the room." We shuffled to the new position. But now we were standing in front of the wall where Maria's wedding photo hung. It was a beautiful picture taken on our wedding day, both of us young and full of hope. Diana looked at the photo and sighed. "That old picture makes the room look dated," she said. "Maybe you should take it down." Something inside me shifted. I had accommodated every request. I had changed my menu, cleaned my house, smiled through insults, and bitten my tongue until it bled. But this was too much. "That photo stays," I said firmly. "That is my wife." Diana shrugged. "Fine. But do not blame me if the pictures look bad." We finished the photos in tense silence. I stood at the edge of every shot, feeling invisible. After the photos, Sophia wandered into the kitchen on her own. A minute later, I heard her voice calling out, "Grandpa, what is this? Can I try some?" I walked in to find her standing by the counter, pointing at the pernil. I smiled and was about to answer when Diana appeared in the doorway. "Sophia, no," she snapped. "I told you we do not eat that." "But it smells good." Sophia said, her face falling. Diana grabbed Sophia's hand and pulled her away from the counter. Then she turned to me, her eyes blazing. "I specifically asked you not to make this. Why do you never listen? I made it for myself," I said calmly. "I did not force anyone to eat it." Diana's voice rose. It does not matter. You are disrespecting my wishes in your own home. Do you understand how insulting that is? I took a deep breath. Diana, I have tried to make you happy all day. I changed the menu. I cleaned the house. I did everything you asked, but this is still my home, and some things I will not change. That was when Diana exploded. This is exactly what I am talking about, she shouted. You always have to have your way. You never accept anyone else's opinion. You are stuck in the past, clinging to a dead woman, refusing to move on. You cannot let go of anything. I stood frozen. The words hit me like physical blows. Diana was not finished. And you know what Marcus has told me everything. How you always favored Julian. How you never supported his dreams. How you made him feel like he was never good enough. All those years Marcus thought he could never measure up. And you never once told him he was doing a good job. I looked at Marcus. He was standing in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes on the floor. He did not deny it. He did not defend me. He just stood there like a coward. Diana's voice dropped to something cold and sharp. You are a hateful man, Emilio. And everyone in this room knows it. You just do not want to admit it. The room was silent. Julian and Priscilla stood frozen in shock. Sophia clung to her mother's leg, looking scared. Marcus still would not meet my eyes, and I said nothing. Not because I had no words. I had plenty. I could have defended myself. I could have listed every sacrifice I made for that boy, every meal I skipped, so he could eat, every dream I abandoned, so his could come true. I could have told Diana about the pickup truck and the piano lessons and the winter I walked through snow with holes in my shoes so my sons could stay warm. But I did not. Because I remembered something Maria once told me. She said, when people show you who they are, let them. The truth always comes out. So I stayed silent. I let the room decide. And slowly the room began to speak. Julian stepped forward, his voice shaking with anger. Diana, you have no right to talk to my father like that. You do not know anything about this family. You do not know what he sacrificed. You do not know who he is. Priscilla moved to stand beside Julian. Emilio has done nothing but love this family his whole life. I have seen it with my own eyes. He welcomed me like a daughter. He has never been anything but kind and generous. Diana looked around the room expecting support, but Marcus still said nothing. And then the most unexpected voice of all spoke up. Sophia pulled away from her mother and ran to me. She wrapped her small arms around my legs and looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Grandpa, I love you, she said. Do not be sad. I knelt down and hugged her tight. I felt tears running down my face, but I did not care. Diana stood there, her face red, her mouth opening and closing, like she wanted to say something, but could not find the words. Finally, she grabbed Marcus by the arm. We are leaving, she announced. Now. Marcus finally looked at me. His eyes were wet. His face was full of shame and regret. But he did not say anything. He just let his wife pull him toward the door. I watched them go. I did not chase after them. I did not beg them to stay. The front door slammed shut. The car engine started. And then they were gone. Julian put his hand on my shoulder. Dad, he said, I am so sorry. I shook my head. Do not apologize for her, I said. This is not your fault. I sat down heavily in my chair, feeling older than my 62 years. The house was quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. It felt like the aftermath of a storm. Broken, but somehow cleaner. Priscilla made us all tea. Sophia sat on my lap, refusing to leave my side. And slowly we began to talk. Not about Diana. not about what had happened, but about Maria, about the good times, about the family we still were, even if it was smaller now. That night, after Julian and Priscilla took Sophia home, I sat alone in the dark living room. I looked at Maria's photo on the wall. I said to her, "She called me hateful, mi amor." Can you believe that I could almost hear Maria's voice in my head? She would have said, "You know who you are, Emilio. Do not let anyone take that from you." I went to bed that night with a heavy heart, but somewhere beneath the pain, there was also a strange sense of peace. I had not fought back. I had not stooped to Diana's level. I had let my silence speak for me, and in that silence the truth had come out. The days after Thanksgiving were quiet. I did not call Marcus. He did not call me. Part of me wanted to pick up the phone to try to fix things, to pretend nothing had happened. But another part of me knew that was not the right approach. Some things cannot be smoothed over. Some things have to be dealt with directly. Julian and Priscilla visited every day that week. They brought food. They helped with chores. They sat with me in the evenings and made sure I was not alone. I did not have the words to express how grateful I was for them. On the fourth day, while cleaning out the closet in our bedroom, I found something I had forgotten about. A wooden box tucked behind old photo albums and winter blankets. I opened it and found a stack of letters. Letters Maria had written over the years. Birthday cards, anniversary notes, little messages she had left for me when I was working late. At the bottom of the stack was an envelope I had never seen before. It had my name written on it in Maria's handwriting, but it looked different. The letters were shaky, uneven, written by a hand that was growing weak. I realized with a start that Maria must have written this during her final weeks, when she knew she was dying. I had never found it because I could not bring myself to go through her things after she passed. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the envelope with trembling hands. "My dearest Emilio," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then I am gone. I am sorry I could not stay longer. I am sorry we did not get more time. But I need you to know something." I kept reading. "You have been the love of my life. Every moment with you has been a gift. I know you will miss me, and I know you will be lonely. But I need you to promise me something. Do not let grief consume you. Do not let anyone make you feel like you are less than what you are." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. "You gave our sons everything," she wrote. "You worked yourself to the bone for them. You sacrificed your dreams so theirs could come true. If they forget that it is their loss, not yours, do not beg for their love. Do not diminish yourself to keep the peace. You deserve better than that." I had to stop reading for a moment. I wiped my eyes and took a deep breath. "Live your life, mi amor. Find joy again. Laugh again. Love again if you can. You deserve peace. You deserve happiness. And you deserve to be surrounded by people who see your worth." She signed it, "Forever yours, Maria." I sat there for a long time holding that letter like it was made of glass. I read it again and again, and each time I felt something shifting inside me. A weight lifting, a wound beginning to heal. Maria was right. She was always right. I had spent so many years putting everyone else first. My parents, my wife, my sons. It was time to start living for myself. The next morning, I woke up with a new sense of purpose. I was not going to sell my house. I was not going to wait around for Marcus to decide whether I was worth his time. I was going to live my life on my own terms. I started small. There was a cooking class at the community center that I had seen advertised for months. I had always been too busy or too sad to sign up. But now I registered. The class was on Tuesday evenings, and it was full of people my age, all learning new recipes and laughing at their mistakes. I made friends there. Real friends. I also started volunteering at a youth center in the neighborhood. They needed someone to teach basic electrical skills to teenagers who wanted to learn a trade. I thought of Frank DeLuca, the man who had taught me when I was young. I wanted to pass that knowledge on. The teenagers called me Tio Emilio, Uncle Emilio. They joked with me, asked for advice about their lives, and treated me like I mattered. It felt good to be needed again. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, I picked up the phone and called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. "Dad," he said, and his voice cracked. I did not waste time on small talk. I said, "I love you. I always have. I always will. But I will not let anyone disrespect me in my own home ever again. When you are ready to talk as a man, I will be here." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Marcus said, I will call you back, Dad. I said, "I hope you will. Goodbye, son." And I hung up. I did not know if he would call back. I did not know if our relationship could ever be what it once was. But I knew I had done the right thing. I had drawn a line. I had respected myself. 2 weeks later, the phone rang on a Sunday evening. It was Marcus. "Dad," he said, "I need to talk to you." I listened as he poured out his heart. He told me about the past 4 years with Diana, how she had slowly isolated him from the rest of the family, how she criticized everything he did, how she made him feel like he was never good enough. He said he had been so afraid of losing her that he had lost himself instead. He told me what happened after they left my house on Thanksgiving. Diana had expected him to agree with her. She expected him to say that I deserved what she had said. But for the first time, Marcus had not agreed. He had told her she was wrong. They had argued for days. He had started seeing a therapist. And now he was calling to say the words I had waited so long to hear. "Dad, I am sorry," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "I am sorry I did not stand up for you. I am sorry I let her say those things. I am sorry I let you down." I listened. I let him speak. When he was finished, I said, "I forgive you. But forgiving does not mean forgetting. You need to decide what kind of man you want to be." "I want to be like you," Dad, Marcus said through tears. "I want to be someone my daughter can be proud of." I felt tears running down my own face. "Then start now," I said. "It is never too late to change." We talked for over an hour that night. We talked about Maria, about the past, about the future. It was not a magic fix. Our relationship was still broken in many ways, but it was a beginning. When I hung up the phone, I walked to Maria's picture on the wall. I said I did it, mi amor. I stayed true to myself. And our boy is finding his way back. A month after that conversation, Marcus came to visit. He came alone. He drove 4 hours from Boston and showed up at my door on a Saturday morning with coffee and donuts. We sat in the kitchen, just the two of us, and talked for hours. It was the kind of conversation we should have had years ago. Real, honest, painful sometimes, but necessary. Marcus told me more about his marriage. Diana was angry that he had apologized to me. She felt like he had betrayed her. They were in couples therapy now, trying to work through their issues. He did not know if the marriage would survive. I did not tell him what to do. I did not say I told you so. I just listened. At one point, Marcus asked me something that caught me off guard. "Dad, how did you and Mom make it work for so long, 40 years together? You must have had problems too." I took a long sip of my coffee before answering. "We did," I said. "There was a time when you were just a little boy when things got very hard. Money was tight. We were both exhausted. We argued about everything. There was a night when I actually wondered if we should separate. Marcus looked shocked. I never knew that. We never told you, I said. But we worked through it. We went to our priest, we talked, we cried. We remembered why we had chosen each other in the first place, and we made a decision to stay on the same team no matter what. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I want that. I want what you and Mom had. Then you have to work for it, I said. Every day. Marriage is not about being right. It is about being together. I told him stories about Maria that he had never heard. I told him about the early days when we were young and broke and ridiculously in love. I told him about the hard times when I thought I would break under the pressure. And I told him about the good times, the ordinary moments that became extraordinary just because we were together. Marcus listened to every word. When I finished, he said, I never really knew Mom. Not the way you did. I wish I had talked to her more before she died. She knew you loved her, I said. That was enough. Over the next few months, things began to change. Marcus started coming to visit more often. Sometimes he brought Sophia. Diana stayed home, which was fine by me. I did not need her apology. Her absence was enough. Marcus began setting boundaries with Diana. He told her that I was his father and that she needed to respect that relationship. He told her that the next time she insulted me, there would be consequences. Diana was not happy about any of this. She was used to getting her way. But Marcus was becoming a different man, a stronger man, the kind of man I had always hoped he would be. As for my relationship with Diana, we never had a big reconciliation. She never apologized directly to me. But she stopped interfering. She stopped making comments. She started staying in the background when Marcus and Sophia visited. It was not friendship. It was not even warmth. But it was peace, and that was enough. Sophia became the bridge that kept us all connected. That little girl had a gift for bringing people together. She would call me on the phone just to tell me about her day. She would draw pictures and mail them to me. Every envelope from her felt like a treasure. I taught her how to make simple dishes, the kind Maria used to make. Arroz con pollo, tostones, flan. Sophia loved it. She said she wanted to be a chef when she grew up, or maybe an astronaut chef who cooked in space. Grandpa, she said one day, while we were stirring a pot together when I grow up, I want to be like you, strong and kind. I had to look away so she would not see me cry. A year passed. Another Thanksgiving arrived. This time everything was different. Julian and Priscilla came, of course. Marcus came too, and he brought Sophia. Diana did not come. She said she had a work commitment, but we all knew the real reason. And honestly, no one minded. The house was full of noise and laughter and the smell of good food. I made pernil again, Maria's recipe. This time, Sophia sat beside me as I prepared it, asking 100 questions. Can I taste the marinade? Why does it take so long to cook? Can I have the crispy skin? We sat around the table for dinner. I said a prayer of thanks. I thanked God for the food, for our health, for the chance to be together. I thanked Him for Maria, who was still with us in spirit. And I thanked Him for second chances. When I opened my eyes after the prayer, I saw Marcus looking at me. There were tears in his eyes, but he was smiling. Thank you, Dad, he said quietly, for not giving up on me. I reached over and squeezed his hand. I never gave up, I said. I was just waiting for you to find your way back. The dinner was everything I had hoped for. We ate too much. We told stories. We laughed until our sides hurt. Sophia insisted on helping clear the table, and she only broke one dish which she apologized for about 50 times until we convinced her it was okay. After everyone left, I sat alone in the living room. I looked around at the empty dishes and the crumpled napkins and the chairs still pushed back from the table. The house was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet, a peaceful kind. I walked over to Maria's photo on the wall. I touched the frame gently. I said, "We did it, mi amor. The family is healing. It is not perfect, but it is real. And that is more than I could have asked for." Looking back on everything that happened, I realized that Thanksgiving dinner a year ago was both the worst and the best thing that could have happened. It was the worst because it exposed the cracks in our family. It showed me how far Marcus had drifted, how much pain was hidden beneath the surface, how close I came to losing my son forever. But it was also the best because it forced us to confront the truth. It made us deal with things we had been avoiding for years, and it gave us the chance to rebuild. Not to go back to what we had before, but to create something new, something stronger. I learned some important lessons from that experience. I learned that silence can be more powerful than words. When Diana attacked me, I could have fought back. I could have matched her anger with my own. But instead, I stayed quiet. I let my silence create space for the truth to emerge. And the truth was that I was not the hateful man she claimed. The people who knew me, who really knew me, understood that. I learned that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. For a long time, I was angry at Marcus for not defending me. I was hurt by his silence, by his weakness, by his failure to stand up for his own father. But holding on to that anger only poisoned me. When I forgave Marcus, I did not do it for him. I did it for myself. I did it so I could be free. I learned that you cannot control how people treat you, but you can control how you respond. Diana may never understand me. She may never respect me. But that is her problem, not mine. I know who I am. I know what I have sacrificed. I know my worth. And no one, not even my own daughter-in-law, can take that away from me. Most importantly, I learned that it is never too late to start living for yourself. I spent decades putting everyone else first. My parents, my wife, my children. And I do not regret any of it. But when Maria died, I realized I had lost myself somewhere along the way. These past 2 years, I have been finding myself again. Taking cooking classes, volunteering with young people, making new friends, traveling back to Puerto Rico to reconnect with my roots. I am 63 years old now. I have lost my wife. I almost lost my son. But I have found something more valuable than I ever expected. I have found myself. If you are watching this and you have been hurt by the people you love, I want you to know that it is not your fault. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who wound us most deeply. But their cruelty does not define you. Their opinions do not determine your worth. You are more than the pain they have caused you. You are more than the names they have called you. You are more than the silence that followed when no one defended you. There is always a way forward. There is always light even in the darkest room. You just have to be patient enough to find it. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where someone you loved said something that broke your heart? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you feel less alone, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss more stories like this, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You never know whose day you might change. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for spending this time with me. I am grateful for each and every one of you. Now go call someone you love. Life is too short to hold on to anger. Life is too precious to waste on people who do not see your worth. Take care of yourselves, and remember you deserve joy. You deserve peace, and you deserve to be surrounded by people who truly love you. Until next time, this is Emilio, wishing